that helped you to turn the relationship with Lisa around? There was nothing, there was the reunion and the workup, but what was it?
Well,
how did it happen?
The way it started was before going to rehab, I was still trying to talk to her, and we still had that friction, that terrible time of poor communication. And I went. I was going to go to rehab because I was dying. I was really in bad shape, and so I was going to rehab. And when I was in there, I was so sick. My body chemistry was messed up. My brain chemistry was in flames. And I wanted to kill myself. It was one of the darkest times of my entire life. And it just seemed like I was trapped in my body and in my mind. It was like there was no way out, and I was in pain all the time. I was freezing all the time. And in rehab, it's a series of lectures and groups and therapy and that sort of thing. And there was one day that I was sitting in the group waiting for it to start, and I was always having demons going in and out of my head. And I had this vision of my two children. All of a sudden there's this daydream, and I saw my son and my daughter walking down the street, and I saw somebody coming up to them and saying, hi Lisa, how's your dad? And she looked sad in this vision, and she said, my dad is dead. And the guy says, well, how did he die? She goes, we don't know if he died of a suicide or an accidental overdose. And in that moment, I started crying from a place I didn't even know I had. It was like from my lower intestines. I started crying. I was reduced to reduced to ectoplasm on the floor. There was nothing left. I realized the selfishness of my behavior. I realized how my actions and my choices and my decisions were hurting other people, and it was so painful to see that I didn't know what to do with myself. And the next day, I saw a counselor, and she asked me about my kid, and I told her, well, I have been making these lame excuses about where I was going. She wasn't going to hear from me for a while, but I'm okay. And I was making these just stupid, lame excuses about where I was going. And my counselor said, look, if you want to stay clean, you have to come clean with your relationships. You have to tell your daughter what's going on. Well, I was afraid to tell her. I was afraid to tell her and ashamed to tell her I was in rehab. But I made the call. I went to the phone, and I called her, and I told her where I was and why. And there was a pause, and I was prepared for the worst. And in a whisper, she said, gee, Dad, I thought you were dying. I thought you went to Mexico for one of those exotic treatments or something. I thought you were dying. And once again, I was face to face with the reality of how my not telling the truth hurts another person. The idea behind it was, oh, I don't want to hurt her, I don't want to embarrass her, I don't want to put her off. The reality is that that I caused a violent. It's like violence what I caused. And so at that point, we started the slow climb towards what you saw there. And it was persistence and love. And love won out over the noise. Love won out over the illusion of separation. And the most painful thing in the world is when we feel separate from one another. If you think about the ultimate punishment that the state can impose, solitary confinement. It is the worst feeling. And it's a separation from spirit. Because if I'm aligned spiritually, then I feel connected to you. But if I'm not, if I'm in fear, if I'm worried about this or that, I'm not connected, and then I start to suffer. So that's how it began with my daughter.